The moment Adrian Voss called her into his office at 7 p.m. on a Friday, Lena Carter knew her carefully ordinary life was about to shatter. 3 years she'd worked for him, 3 years of keeping her head down, her feelings buried, her attraction locked away like a dangerous secret. Now he stood before her, this man who commanded boardrooms and broke competitors without blinking and asked the impossible, "Be my girlfriend for one night." Not real, never real. Just an act to silence his family's whispers and protect his empire. She should have said no. She should have walked away. But when Adrian Voss asked for something, the world bent to his will. And Lena Carter, despite every warning screaming in her mind, was about to discover she was no exception. Before we dive into this story of deception, desire, and dangerous boundaries, make sure you're subscribed and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss a single moment of what happens when a fake relationship becomes dangerously real. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Voss Industries' executive floor had long since dimmed to their evening mode. That peculiar half-darkness that transformed the sleek modern office into something almost intimate. Lena Carter sat at her desk outside Adrian Voss's corner office, the glow of her computer screen reflecting off her glasses as she finished formatting the quarterly reports he'd need for Monday's board meeting. It was 6:47 p.m. on a Friday in mid-December, and the sensible thing would have been to go home an hour ago like everyone else. But Lena had learned in her 3 years as Adrian's executive assistant that sensible and working for Adrian Voss rarely occupied the same sentence. She was just saving the final document when his office door opened. "Lena." That voice, deep, precise, with an edge that could cut through steel or silence a room full of executives mid-argument. Lena had heard it every working day for 3 years, and it still sent an involuntary shiver down her spine, a reaction she'd become expert at suppressing. "Yes, Mr. Voss?" She turned, professional smile in place, hands folded neatly on her desk. Adrian Voss stood in his doorway, 6 feet 2 inches of controlled power wrapped in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. At 34, he was the youngest CEO in Voss Industries' 70-year history, and he wore that achievement like armor. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes the color of storm clouds. He was objectively, devastatingly handsome, and Lena had spent 3 years pretending not to notice. "Come in, please. Close the door." Her pulse quickened. In 3 years, he'd never asked her to close the door. Their relationship was built on transparency. Glass walls, open communication, professional distance. Closed doors meant something had changed. Lena stood, smoothing her sensible black skirt, and walked into his office. The space was exactly what you'd expect from a man like Adrian Voss. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black, everything sharp angles and clean lines. No photos, no personal touches, nothing that revealed the man beneath the executive. She closed the door with a soft click that seemed thunderous in the sudden quiet. "Sit." Adrian gestured to one of the leather chairs facing his desk, but he didn't return to his own seat. Instead, he moved to the windows, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city lights beginning to sparkle in the winter dusk. Lena sat, back straight, hands in her lap, waiting. She'd learned patience working for Adrian. He was a man who chose his words carefully, who never spoke without purpose. "I need to ask you something," he said finally, still not looking at her. "Something that falls well outside your job description." "All right." Her voice was steady, even as her mind raced through possibilities. Overtime during the holidays, a difficult project, something to do with the Henderson merger? "It's personal." That stopped her thoughts cold. Personal. Adrian Voss didn't do personal. He had acquaintances, not friends. Colleagues, not confidants. He attended charity galas and business dinners, always alone, always unreachable. The tabloids called him the Ice King of Manhattan, a title he seemed to wear with sardonic amusement. He turned to face her, and for the first time in 3 years, Lena saw something unexpected in those gray eyes. Uncertainty. "My family has a Christmas gathering every year at the estate in Connecticut," Adrian began, each word measured. "It's mandatory. My grandfather founded the company, my father expanded it, and now they all watch me run it with varying degrees of skepticism and interference. They gather to drink expensive wine, exchange expensive gifts, and discuss business strategies they think I'm handling incorrectly. Lena nodded, though she wasn't sure where this was going. She knew about the Voss family. Everyone in the company did. Old money, old power, old expectations. This year, there's a complication. Adrian's jaw tightened. Rumors. Specifically, rumors about my personal life, or lack thereof. Questions about why I'm 34 and unmarried, why I'm never seen with anyone, whether I'm truly committed to building a legacy or just playing corporate games. I see, Lena said carefully, though she didn't. Not really. My cousin Richard has been particularly vocal. Adrian's voice hardened. He's been lobbying my grandfather, suggesting that someone with a more stable personal life might be better suited to lead the company into the next generation. It's bullshit, of course. Richard couldn't run a lemonade stand without bankrupting it. But my grandfather is 87 and traditional. He's starting to listen. Understanding began to dawn, cold and uncomfortable. Mr. Voss, I need you to come with me to the Christmas gathering. The words came out flat, final. As my girlfriend. One night, Lena. One performance. Enough to silence the rumors and show my family that I'm perfectly capable of maintaining a relationship while running their company. The office seemed to tilt. Lena gripped the arms of her chair, her mind spinning. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend, she said slowly. Yes. At your family's Christmas gathering. Yes. Why me? The question hung in the air between them. It was the question that mattered, the one that could reveal truths neither of them was ready to face. Adrian moved away from the window, coming to lean against his desk, closer now. Close enough that she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the almost imperceptible tension in his shoulders. Because you're perfect for this, he said simply. You're intelligent, articulate, professional. You know me better than anyone. You've managed my schedule, handled my correspondence, seen me at my worst during the Carlson crisis and the Mitchell takeover. You know how I think, how I move, what I need before I ask for it. If anyone can convincingly play the role of someone who knows me intimately, it's you. His words were logical, practical, perfectly Adrian Voss. But they landed like stones in Lena's chest. And, he continued, you're an employee. This is a transaction. When it's over, we go back to normal. No complications, no emotions, no mess. I'll compensate you, of course. Name your price. There it was. The arrangement, stripped of romance, reduced to its component parts. A business deal. Lena should have said no. Every instinct, every self-preservation mechanism she'd developed over 3 years of carefully not falling for her impossible boss screamed at her to refuse. This was dangerous territory, the kind that blurred lines that should never be blurred. But even as she opened her mouth to decline, another part of her, the part she'd been suppressing since the day she first walked into this office and met Adrian's storm-cloud eyes, whispered something different. One night, just one night to stand beside him, not as his assistant, but as his equal. One night to touch him, to be close to him, to pretend that the impossible might be possible. It was foolish. It was reckless. It was exactly the kind of emotional mistake she'd sworn never to make. I don't want money, she heard herself say. Adrian's eyebrows rose fractionally. No? No. Lena took a breath, steadying herself. If she was going to do this, and apparently she was, then she needed something that mattered. I want you to write me a letter of recommendation. Unrestricted, glowing, for any position I might apply for in the future. On company letterhead, signed and sealed. Understanding flickered in his eyes, followed by something that might have been respect. You're planning to leave. Not immediately, Lena said. But someday, yes. I've been your assistant for 3 years, Mr. Voss. I've learned everything I can from this position. Eventually, I'll want to move forward, and a recommendation from you would be invaluable. It was true, mostly. She did want to advance her career. But the deeper truth, the one she couldn't say, was that she needed an exit strategy. Because working for Adrian Voss while harboring feelings she could never acknowledge was slowly killing her, and one day she'd need to save herself. Done. Adrian's response was immediate. I'll have it drafted before the gathering. Anything else? When is this event? Tomorrow night. Tomorrow? Lena's voice rose despite her best efforts. You're giving me less than 24 hours to prepare? The The gathering was scheduled months ago. Adrian had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I only decided to bring someone today. If it helps, I'll arrange everything. Car, dress, jewelry, hair, makeup. You won't need to worry about any of it. Of course he would. Adrian Voss didn't leave details to chance. If she was going to be his accessory for the evening, she'd be the perfect accessory, styled and presented exactly as he required. The thought should have rankled. Instead, it sent an unexpected thrill through her. "What time?" she asked. "I'll pick you up at 4. The gathering starts at 6, but it's a 2-hour drive to the estate, and I want time to brief you properly." "Brief me." "Yes." Adrian straightened, slipping back into executive mode. "You'll need to know about my family, who they are, what they do, which ones to charm and which ones to avoid. You'll need to know our story, how we met, how long we've been together, the details that make it believable. This only works if it's seamless, Lena. If there are cracks in the performance, my family will exploit them." "Our story." The words sent another shiver through her. "All right," Lena said. 4 o'clock, I'll be ready." Adrian nodded, then moved back around his desk, pulling out his phone. "I'll text you my personal number. Use it if you need anything before tomorrow." He paused, looking at her directly. "Thank you, Lena. I know this is unusual." Unusual was one word for it. Completely insane might be more accurate. But Lena just smiled, stood, and smoothed her skirt. "Is there anything else you need tonight, Mr. Voss?" "No. Go home. Get some rest." His eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. "Tomorrow will be intense." Lena nodded and turned toward the door, her hand on the handle when his voice stopped her. "Lena." She looked back. "When we're there at the estate, you'll need to call me Adrian. We should probably start practicing now." The sound of his first name in his own voice, directed at her, spoken like an invitation, made her breath catch. "All right, Adrian." His slight smile was devastating. "Better. See you tomorrow." Lena fled. She didn't sleep that night. How could she, when her mind kept replaying every word, every look, every impossible moment of that conversation? She lay in her small apartment in Brooklyn, staring at her ceiling, trying to logic her way through what she'd just agreed to. It was fake. A performance. A strategic move in Adrian's endless chess game with his family and the business world. It meant nothing beyond one night of pretense. But her hands were shaking when she thought about it. Her heart was racing. Because for 3 years, she'd been so careful, so controlled. She'd trained herself not to react when Adrian leaned over her desk to point at something on her screen, when his hand accidentally brushed hers passing documents, when he stayed late and they were alone on the executive floor, the city lights outside and silence between them. She'd learned to see him as her boss, nothing more, to compress every unwanted flutter of attraction into a tiny box in her mind labeled unprofessional and impossible. And now he was asking her to unlock that box, to let all those carefully suppressed reactions out, to touch him and stand beside him and pretend to be his. It was psychological torture dressed up as opportunity. Her phone buzzed on her nightstand. She grabbed it, saw an unknown number, and knew immediately who it was. Unknown number. "This is Adrian, confirming 4 p.m. pickup tomorrow. I'll have a stylist meet you at noon at the address below. Everything will be provided." AV. Below the message was an address in Midtown, one of those exclusive salons that didn't even have names on the door, where appointments were by referral only and the prices were never discussed because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Lena typed back, "Understood. Thank you." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "Sleep well, Lena." She stared at those 3 words for far too long, reading things into them that couldn't possibly be there, then forced herself to put the phone down and close her eyes. Sleep didn't come, but morning did. The salon was everything Lena expected and nothing she was prepared for. From the moment she walked in, giving Adrian's name at the unmarked door, she was swept into a world of quiet luxury and efficient transformation. "Miss Carter?" A woman in elegant black appeared at her elbow. "I'm Simone. Mr. Voss has given us very specific instructions. If you'll follow me?" Lena followed, because what else could she do into a private room where a team waited? Hair, makeup, wardrobe, jewelry. They moved around her like a choreographed dance, consulting tablets and murmuring to each other in the shorthand of professionals who knew exactly what they were creating. Mr. Voss sent photos, Simone explained, showing Lena her own image on a tablet, professional headshots from the company website. He wants you to look like yourself, just elevated. His words, "She's already beautiful. Just help her see it." Lena's heart did something complicated in her chest. They started with her hair, which she usually wore in a practical bun or ponytail. The stylist, a tiny woman with purple streaks and gentle hands, released it from its constraints, trimmed the ends, and created something Lena had never seen on herself. Soft waves that caught the light, elegant without being overdone. "You have gorgeous hair," the stylist said. "Why do you hide it?" Because working for Adrian Voss required armor, and severe hairstyles were part of hers. But Lena didn't say that. She just smiled. Makeup came next, applied by a man who studied her face like a painter approaching a canvas. "Good bones," he murmured. "Beautiful eyes. Will enhance, not mask." He worked with swift precision, creating something natural but striking, darker lashes, defined cheeks, lips a shade deeper than her own. When he turned her to the mirror, Lena barely recognized herself. "Oh," she breathed. "Wait until you see the dress," Simone said with a knowing smile. The dress. Of course there was a dress. Simone led her to a changing area where 3 options hung, each more stunning than the last. "Mr. Voss wasn't sure of your preference," she explained. "He said to let you choose what makes you feel confident." The first was red, bold, striking, impossible to ignore. The second was black, classic, elegant, safe. The third was midnight blue, the color of the sky just before true darkness, with a neckline that hinted without revealing and a silhouette that would hug every curve. Lena reached for the blue without hesitation. It fit like it had been made for her, which, she realized as Simone zipped her up, it probably had been. Adrian must have provided her measurements. The thought of him knowing the exact dimensions of her body sent heat flooding her cheeks. "Perfect," Simone declared. "Absolutely perfect. Now jewelry." A velvet box appeared, and inside it, a set that made Lena's breath catch. Sapphire earrings and a delicate sapphire pendant on a silver chain. Simple, but clearly expensive. "Mr. Voss said these were his mother's," Simone said softly. "He wanted you to wear them tonight." His mother's jewelry. The woman who died when Adrian was 15, leaving him to navigate the Voss family dynamics alone. Lena knew this from company lore, from the rare moments Adrian mentioned his past, and he wanted her to wear his mother's sapphires. This wasn't just a performance, this was something else, something that blurred the careful lines Adrian had drawn around their arrangement. "They're beautiful," Lena managed, watching as Simone fastened the necklace, the cool weight of it settling against her throat. When she looked in the full-length mirror, the woman looking back was someone she'd never seen before. Elegant, confident, beautiful in a way that took her breath away. "Mr. Voss will be pleased," Simone said. But would he? Or would he just see a successfully styled accessory, perfect for his purposes? Lena didn't let herself answer that question. Adrian's car, a sleek black Mercedes, pulled up to her building at exactly 4 p.m. Lena watched from her apartment window as the driver stepped out, professional in a dark suit, and she took one last deep breath before grabbing her clutch and heading downstairs. The December air was cold against her skin, and she was grateful for the cashmere wrap Simone had insisted she take. The driver opened the back door with a polite nod, and Lena slid into the warm interior. Adrian was already there, and when he turned to look at her, something happened to his expression. It was gone in an instant, a crack in his usual control, but Lena saw it. Surprise, appreciation, something deeper that made her pulse race. "Lena," he said, and her name in his voice sounded different than it ever had before. "Adrian," she replied, testing the familiar intimacy of his first name on her tongue. He was wearing a different suit than he'd had on yesterday. Charcoal gray with a subtle pinstripe, perfectly tailored, devastatingly handsome. His dark hair was slightly less controlled than usual, and there was something about seeing him outside the office, in this intimate space, that made him seem more real, more human, more dangerous. "You look—" He paused, choosing words. "Incredible. The blue was the right choice." You told them to give me options. I did. His eyes held hers. I wanted you to feel comfortable. This is already asking a lot of you. The driver pulled into traffic, and they began the journey to Connecticut, to the Voss estate, to whatever waited at the end of this impossible night. Should we go over the details? Lena asked, needing to focus on something practical, something that wasn't the way Adrian was looking at her or the warmth of his proximity in the enclosed space. Yes. Adrian pulled out his phone, brought up notes. All right, we've been together for 6 months. We kept it quiet initially because of the workplace relationship. But we're serious now. We met, obviously, through work. You were my assistant. I noticed you. I asked you to dinner. Things progressed naturally. Naturally, Lena echoed, the word feeling strange given how carefully unnatural their actual relationship had been. We'll need to have some shared memories, Adrian continued. Things that sound specific, authentic. First date. Where should we say it was? Lena thought. Somewhere you'd actually go. The Oak Room? Too obvious. Everyone knows I take business dinners there. Adrian considered. There's a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, Carmine's. No one knows I go there because it's not the kind of place I'm usually photographed at. We'll say I took you there because I wanted somewhere private, intimate. The way he said intimate made Lena's skin warm. All right, Carmine's. What did we eat? You had the seafood risotto, Adrian said without hesitation. I had the osso buco. We shared a bottle of Barolo and you told me about growing up in Ohio, about wanting to come to New York since you were a teenager, about taking this job because you wanted to learn from the best. Lena stared at him. How do you know all that? Because you told me. Not all at once, but over 3 years of early mornings and late nights and conversations in between meetings. I pay attention, Lena. He paid attention. The man who seemed to notice nothing beyond profit margins and stock prices had apparently been cataloging details about her life, storing them away, knowing her in ways she'd never realized. What about you? She asked quietly. What have I learned about you in 6 months? Adrian's expression shuddered slightly, the way it always did when conversations turned personal. That I'm demanding but fair, that I don't sleep much, that I actually can cook but rarely have time, that my family drives me insane but I'm bound to them by obligation and legacy. He paused. That I'm not as cold as everyone thinks, that with the right person, I'm capable of more. The last words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither acknowledged. Your family, Lena said, redirecting. Tell me about them. Who will be there? Adrian shifted, pulling up photos on his phone. All right, briefing time. Pay attention. This is important. For the next hour, as the car wound through traffic and onto the highway, Adrian walked her through the Voss family tree. His grandfather, Sebastian Voss, the patriarch, founder of the company, sharp as ever despite his age. His father, Marcus Voss, who'd expanded the empire into international markets before dying of a heart attack 5 years ago. His mother, Catherine, the only warmth in the family, gone when Adrian was 15. His uncle Thomas and Aunt Patricia, who ran the European division. His cousin Richard, the one pushing the narrative that Adrian needed to settle down. 38, married with 2 kids, ambitious and territorial. Richard's sister Caroline, nicer but weak, always following her brother's lead. Various other relatives, business associates, family friends, all of them watching, judging, looking for weaknesses. They'll test you, Adrian warned, especially the women. They'll ask personal questions, try to catch inconsistencies. You need to stay calm, stay in character. If you're unsure about something, defer to me. Touch me, look at me, let me handle it. Touch you, Lena repeated. Yes. Adrian's eyes met hers. We're a couple, Lena. We need to act like one. Hand-holding, standing close, casual physical contact. Nothing inappropriate, but it needs to look natural, comfortable, like we're used to touching each other. They weren't. In 3 years, they'd maintained perfect professional distance. The most contact they'd ever had was the accidental brush of hands or the moment he'd steadied her when she tripped on stairs, his hand on her elbow for 3 seconds that burned into her memory. I understand, Lena said. I know this is strange, Adrian said quietly. But I trust you. You're brilliant at reading situations, adapting, performing when necessary. That's why you're so good at your job. You know what people need before they ask. Just apply those same skills tonight. He was right. This was just another performance, another role, another situation to navigate with professionalism and poise. Except it wasn't. Because when Adrian reached across the seat and took her hand, just practicing, just getting used to the feel of it, Lena's entire body came alive with a shock of awareness that had nothing to do with professionalism. His hand was warm, larger than hers, fingers threading through hers with careful pressure. His thumb traced a slow circle on her palm, and she wondered if he could feel her pulse racing. "Like this," he said, voice lower than usual. "Natural, easy. Like we do this all the time." "Right," Lena managed, trying to sound unaffected. "Natural." But there was nothing natural about the way her heart was pounding, about the heat spreading through her from that single point of contact, about the way she wanted to lean into him and forget every careful boundary they'd ever maintained. Adrian seemed to realize they'd been holding hands for too long. He released her, turning back to his phone, but not before Lena saw something flicker in his expression. Awareness, maybe, or recognition of the dangerous territory they were entering. "We're 20 minutes out," he said. "Final preparations. Remember, we're happy, comfortable with each other, committed. You're not intimidated by my family or their wealth. You're confident, intelligent, exactly the kind of woman who would attract someone like me. And Lena?" "Yes?" "You don't have to pretend to be someone else. Just be you, but amplified. That's all I need." The car turned off the highway onto a tree-lined private road, and through the winter twilight, Lena caught her first glimpse of the Voss estate. It was magnificent and intimidating in equal measure, a sprawling mansion that looked like it had been transplanted from the English countryside, all stone and ivy and leaded windows glowing with golden light. The grounds stretched in every direction, manicured even in winter, and the circular drive was already filling with expensive cars. "Ready?" Adrian asked. "No, absolutely not. This was insane." "Yes," Lena said. The car stopped. The driver came around to open her door. Adrian stepped out first, then extended his hand to help her, and when she took it, his fingers closed around hers with warm certainty. She emerged into the cold December evening, her breath misting in the air, and Adrian didn't let go of her hand. Instead, he drew her closer, until she was standing beside him, his arms settling naturally around her waist. "Just breathe," he murmured against her ear, quiet enough that only she could hear. "You look perfect. You are perfect. They're going to love you." Then louder, as the front door opened and light spilled onto the drive. "Here we go?" And Lena, her heart pounding against the cage of her ribs, wearing a dead woman's sapphires and a midnight blue dress, playing the role of Adrian Voss's girlfriend, walked with him toward the waiting mansion, and whatever truth or lies the night would reveal. The performance had begun. The entrance hall of the Voss estate was exactly what old money looked like when it had nowhere left to prove itself. Marble floors polished to mirrors, a sweeping double staircase that belonged in a museum, crystal chandeliers that threw fractured light across oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors who seemed to judge everyone who passed beneath their gilded frames. The air smelled of pine from the massive Christmas tree dominating the center of the space, its branches heavy with ornaments that probably cost more than Lena's annual salary. Adrian's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her waist as they crossed the threshold, and she felt the shift in him, the way his shoulders squared, his expression cooling into something more controlled, more guarded. This wasn't her boss anymore. This was Adrian Voss, heir to an empire, walking into enemy territory that happened to be his family home. "Adrian!" A woman's voice rang out, bright and sharp as breaking glass. "Finally! We were beginning to think you'd gotten lost." She descended the staircase like she owned it, which, Lena supposed, she partially did. This had to be Patricia, Adrian's aunt, the one who ran the European division with what Adrian had described as ruthless efficiency and absolutely no sense of humor. She was in her early 60s, rail-thin in a Chanel suit, her blonde hair swept into a severe chignon that matched her severe expression. "Patricia." Adrian's voice was cordial, distant. Traffic was worse than expected. Patricia's eyes had already moved past him, landing on Lena with the precision of a hawk spotting prey. "And who is this?" "This is Lena Carter." Adrian drew Lena forward, his hand sliding from her waist to lace their fingers together. My girlfriend. Lena, my aunt, Patricia Voss Crawford. The word girlfriend, in Adrian's voice, spoken with such casual certainty, sent a thrill through Lena that she fought to suppress. This was acting, performance, nothing real. How lovely. Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes as she descended the final steps, extending a hand that Lena shook with firm confidence. Adrian's kept you quite secret. We had no idea he was seeing anyone. We preferred to keep things private initially, Lena said smoothly, the response she and Adrian had rehearsed. Given that we worked together, we wanted to be certain it was serious before making it public. And is it? Patricia's gaze was surgical. Serious? Adrian answered before Lena could. Very. His thumb traced that same maddening circle on her palm that he'd done in the car. The gesture so convincing that Lena almost forgot it was calculated. Lena's become essential to me in ways I didn't anticipate. The double meaning wasn't lost on anyone. Patricia's expression flickered. Surprise, reassessment, something that might have been approval. Well, she said, recovering. How unexpected. Everyone's in the drawing room. Sebastian will want to meet her immediately, Adrian. You know how he is about surprises. They followed Patricia through corridors lined with more paintings, more evidence of wealth accumulated over generations. Other relatives emerged from doorways as they passed, voices calling greetings, eyes tracking Lena with undisguised curiosity. She felt like a specimen under glass, examined and catalogued with every step. Adrian leaned down, his lips nearly brushing her ear. You're doing perfectly, he murmured. Just stay close to me. The drawing room was enormous, all dark wood paneling and leather furniture arranged around a fireplace large enough to stand in. Perhaps 40 people filled the space, holding crystal glasses of champagne and wine, their conversations creating a low hum of cultured voices. The Christmas tree in here was smaller than the one in the entrance hall, but no less opulent, and French doors along one wall revealed a terrace overlooking snow-dusted grounds that stretched toward darkness. But Lena's attention fixed immediately on the man sitting in a wingback chair near the fire, a throne from which he surveyed his kingdom. Sebastian Voss, 87 years old, white-haired, sharp-eyed, radiating the kind of power that didn't diminish with age. He held a tumbler of what looked like scotch, and when he saw Adrian, his expression shifted into something that might have been warmth in a man capable of such things. Adrian, his voice was surprisingly strong. Come here, boy. Let me look at you. Adrian crossed to him, drawing Lena with him, and she watched as he bent to kiss his grandfather's cheek, a gesture of affection that seemed genuine despite everything. Grandfather, you're looking well. I'm old, but I'm not dead yet. Sebastian's eyes moved to Lena, and she felt the full weight of his assessment. And who's the stunning creature you've brought into our den of wolves? Lena Carter, Adrian said, pride evident in his voice. Pride that sounded real enough to make Lena's chest tighten. My girlfriend, Lena, my grandfather, Sebastian Voss. Mr. Voss, Lena extended her hand, meeting his gaze directly. It's an honor to meet you. Sebastian took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he turned it over, studying her fingers. No ring, he observed. Should I be expecting an announcement soon, Adrian? The room had gone quiet, conversations dying as people turned to listen. This was the moment Adrian had warned her about, the moment when his family would pounce on any weakness, any hesitation. When I asked Lena to marry me, Adrian said calmly, you'll be the first to know, grandfather. After her, of course. When, not if. Sebastian released Lena's hand, a smile playing at his lips. Interesting? Sit, both of you. Tell me how this happened. Adrian's never brought a woman to meet us before. Adrian guided Lena to a sofa positioned near Sebastian's chair, close enough for conversation but not uncomfortably so. As they sat, his arm settled along the back of the sofa behind her shoulders, his fingers brushing her upper arm in a gesture that looked entirely natural. Lena folded her hands in her lap, conscious of every eye in the room watching them. We met at work, Adrian began, the story they'd rehearsed flowing easily. Lena's been my executive assistant for 3 years. I'd noticed her, of course. It would be impossible not to. She's brilliant, efficient, anticipates problems before they arise. But it wasn't until about 6 months ago that I realized what I was feeling was more than professional respect. What changed? A new voice asked. Auschipatis. Lena looked up to see a man in his late 30s approaching, handsome in a practiced way, his smile friendly, but his eyes calculating. This had to be Richard, the cousin who'd been stirring up trouble. The Carlson crisis, Adrian said without missing a beat. We were working late, very late. It was 3 in the morning, we'd been negotiating for 18 hours straight, and everything was falling apart. I was ready to walk away from the deal, cut our losses. But Lena found a solution buried in the contract details that no one else had seen. She saved us millions, and when I looked at her in that moment, exhausted but brilliant, I thought, this is the woman I want beside me for every battle. It was a good story. It was a great story. The only problem was that it was almost entirely true. The Carlson crisis had happened exactly as Adrian described, and Lena had found that contract loophole, and he had looked at her with something that made her breath catch. She'd told herself then that it was just professional appreciation. Now, hearing him describe it like a romantic revelation, she wasn't sure what had been real and what had been her own desperate hoping. So you fell in love over spreadsheets and contract negotiations, Richard said, skepticism clear in his voice. How corporate? I fell in love with her mind first, Adrian replied evenly. Everything else followed. Is that a problem, Richard? Not at all. Richard raised his champagne glass. I'm thrilled for you. We all are. It's just surprising, that's all. You've been so dedicated to the company, so focused on work. Some of us wondered if you had room in your life for anything else. There it was. The implication that Adrian was all business, no substance, incapable of the kind of emotional commitment that built legacies beyond corporate ones. I make room for what matters, Adrian said, his voice taking on an edge. Lena matters. Sebastian chuckled, the sound dry as autumn leaves. Well said. Tell me, Lena, what do you see in my workaholic grandson? Besides his devastating charm and remarkable humility? The room laughed, the tension breaking slightly. Lena smiled, feeling Adrian's fingers tighten almost imperceptibly on her shoulder. Encouragement or warning, she wasn't sure. I see someone who cares deeply about everything he does, she said carefully. Someone who holds himself to impossible standards and somehow meets them anyway. Someone who's loyal to the people he values, even when they don't make it easy. She glanced at Adrian, found him watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. And yes, the devastating charm doesn't hurt. More laughter. Sebastian looked pleased. Even Richard seemed slightly disarmed. Smart and diplomatic, Sebastian observed. Adrian, you've chosen well. Much better than that hollow-headed heiress you brought to the gala 2 years ago. What was her name? Brittany? Bethany? That wasn't serious, grandfather, and her name was Brianna. Whoever she was boring. This one has fire. Sebastian raised his glass to Lena. Welcome to the family, my dear. I suspect you'll need that fire to survive us. A server appeared with champagne, pressing glasses into their hands. Patricia materialized at Sebastian's elbow, launching into some question about European market projections, and the attention shifted away from them. Adrian's posture relaxed fractionally. Well done, he murmured against Lena's ear, quiet enough that only she could hear. You're a natural. I had a good teacher, she replied, just as quietly. You tell a convincing story. The best lies are mostly truth. Before she could parse what that meant, more relatives descended. Adrian's Uncle Thomas, pompous and long-winded, wanting to discuss quarterly earnings. Caroline, Richard's sister, kinder than her brother, but clearly tasked with gathering information. A parade of cousins, business associates, family friends, all of them smiling, probing, testing the new addition to their ecosystem. Through it all, Adrian kept Lena close, his hand on her back, guiding her through conversations, his arm around her waist when they stood to refill drinks. Small touches that accumulated like evidence, a hand on her elbow, fingers brushing hers when he handed her a fresh glass of wine, the way he leaned in to murmur context about the person approaching. Each touch sent electricity through her system. Each casual intimacy reminded her that this wasn't real, that Monday morning they'd go back to being boss and assistant, that she was a fool for letting herself feel anything beyond professional detachment. But professionalism was getting harder to maintain with every passing minute. Dinner was announced, and they moved to a formal dining room where a table stretched long enough to seat 50. Place cards arranged them with surgical precision. Adrian at Sebastian's right hand, Lena beside Adrian, Richard directly across from them. The message was clear. The heir, his girlfriend, and his rival, all positioned for optimal observation in conflict. The meal was exquisite and torturous. Multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last, served by silent staff who appeared and vanished like ghosts. Conversation flowed around political donations and market trends, charity galas and vacation homes, the casual currency of people for whom money was a language spoken fluently. Lena navigated it carefully, contributing when appropriate, listening more than speaking, deflecting personal questions with the grace Adrian had taught her through 3 years of managing difficult clients and board members. But Richard was relentless. "So Lena," he said during the third course, his smile sharp. "What did your family think when you told them you were dating Adrian Voss? They must have been thrilled." It was a trap, beautifully laid. Either she came from money, in which case, why was she working as an assistant, or she didn't, which would mark her as an outsider, someone marrying up, potentially a gold digger. "My parents passed away when I was in college," Lena said evenly, the truth serving as armor. "But my sister was very happy for me. She lives in Ohio, teaches high school English, and she mostly just wanted to know if Adrian could get her students discounted tickets to the opera since Voss Industries sponsors the Met." "And can you?" Caroline asked, genuinely curious. Adrian answered before Lena could. "Already arranged. Lena told me about her sister's class studying Shakespeare, and I had my assistant—" He paused, caught himself. "My former assistant, I should say, since that's no longer Lena's role. I had her contact the Met's education department. They're setting up a special matinee performance with a backstage tour." Lena turned to stare at him. "You did what?" "You mentioned it a month ago," Adrian said, meeting her gaze. "Your sister's struggling to get her students interested in classic literature. I thought a live production might help. Was I wrong to arrange it?" He had listened to a throwaway comment she'd made about her sister's teaching challenges, buried in some larger conversation about weekend plans. He'd listened, remembered, and acted on it without telling her. "No," Lena managed, her throat tight. That was incredibly thoughtful. Thank you." "Anything for you," Adrian said, and the way he looked at her in that moment made her forget they were acting. "How sweet," Richard said, the words curdling with sarcasm. "Adrian Voss, patron of the arts and devoted boyfriend. Who knew you had it in you, cousin?" "There's a lot you don't know about me, Richard," Adrian replied coolly. "Apparently," Richard leaned back, swirling his wine. "I'm just surprised you found time for romance given how consumed you are with work. I mean, you practically live at the office. When do you even see each other?" "We make time for what matters," Lena said, echoing Adrian's earlier words. "And living at the office is an exaggeration. Adrian keeps reasonable hours." Patricia laughed from down the table. "Does he? Because his light's on when I email him at midnight." "He's allowed to work late occasionally," Lena said, warmth creeping into her voice despite herself. The protective instinct that always flared when people criticized Adrian, even in small ways. "That doesn't mean he lives there. He has a life outside the office. We have a life." "Oh?" Richard's eyebrow arched. "Tell us about this life. What do you two do together when you're not saving companies or negotiating deals?" Another trap. What did they do? What story had they created? Lena's mind raced, but Adrian's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. "Normal things," he said. "Dinner, movies, walks through Central Park. Last weekend we went to the Museum of Modern Art. Lena wanted to see the new Rothko exhibition." "Did I?" Lena asked quietly, playing along. "You did. You stood in front of Orange and Yellow for 15 minutes, completely still, like you were absorbing it. I took a photo." He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and showed the table an image that made Lena's heart stop. It was her. In the museum, standing before that exact painting, lost in thought. She remembered that day. She'd gone alone on a Saturday afternoon needing space from her small apartment and smaller thoughts. She'd had no idea Adrian was there. "You were following me?" she whispered. "I was there coincidentally. Adrian said, his voice low enough that only she could hear. I saw you. I almost approached, but you looked so peaceful I didn't want to disturb you, so I just watched. And when you left, I didn't follow, but I kept the photo. This was impossible. This was real and impossible and devastating all at once. That's beautiful, Carolyn said, her earlier skepticism melting. Richard, when's the last time you took me to a museum? I'm more of a golf person, Richard muttered, clearly unhappy with how the conversation had shifted. Dessert arrived, some elaborate confection involving chocolate and gold leaf, and talk turned to Christmas traditions, to childhood memories of holidays at the estate. Adrian contributed sparingly, and Lena noticed the way his jaw tightened when Patricia mentioned that awful year after Catherine died, when Christmas stopped being fun. His mother. The woman whose sapphires Lena wore, cool against her throat. She squeezed Adrian's hand under the table, offering silent comfort, and felt him squeeze back, gratitude or acknowledgement, or something more complicated. After dinner, they migrated back to the drawing room for coffee and brandy. The party fractured into smaller conversations, groups forming and reforming like cells dividing. Lena found herself cornered by Caroline and two other female cousins whose names she'd already forgotten, all of them asking questions about the wedding that wasn't happening, about whether she wanted children, about how she planned to balance career and family. I haven't thought that far ahead, Lena said honestly. We're just enjoying being together right now. But Adrian will want heirs eventually, one of the cousins said, a blonde woman in diamonds that probably cost more than a car. The Voss legacy requires it. You must have discussed it. We've discussed that our relationship is between us, Lena said firmly, and that major life decisions will be made together when we're ready, without input from the extended family. Respectfully. The blonde cousin blinked, clearly unused to being dismissed so politely but completely. Caroline laughed. I like you, she said. You don't let people push you around. Adrian needs that. He's surrounded by yes men at work. I'm definitely not a yes woman, Lena agreed. No, you're not. The voice came from behind her, warm and close. Adrian's hand settled on her waist, drawing her back against him in a gesture that looked effortlessly intimate. Ladies, I'm stealing my girlfriend for a moment. Grandfather wants to speak with us. He guided Lena away from the group, but instead of heading toward Sebastian, he steered her toward the French doors leading to the terrace. I thought your grandfather wanted to talk, Lena said. He will. Later. Right now, I need air, and you looked like you were about to commit justifiable homicide. They stepped outside into the December night, and Lena gasped at the cold, her breath misting. The terrace was empty, illuminated by soft lights strung along the stone balustrade. Beyond it, the ground stretched dark and vast, snow-covered gardens dissolving into shadows. Adrian shrugged out of his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders without asking, his hands lingering on her upper arms. Better? He asked. I'm fine. You'll freeze. I'll survive. He moved to lean against the balustrade, looking out at the darkness, and Lena joined him, pulling his jacket tighter around herself. It smelled like him. Expensive cologne and something warmer, more personal. How are you holding up? Adrian asked after a moment. Better than expected. Your family is... And she searched for the diplomatic word. Exhausting? Intrusive? Relentlessly judgmental? I was going to say intense. Adrian laughed, the sound genuine and unexpected. That's diplomatic. But yes, intense is accurate. You're handling them perfectly, Lena. Better than I could have hoped. The museum photo, she said, needing to address it. That was real. You were really there. Yes. Why didn't you say anything? Why just watch and leave? Adrian was quiet for a long moment, his profile sharp against the lights of the house. Because seeing you outside of work, being yourself, completely unguarded, it reminded me that you have a life beyond being my assistant, that you're a whole person with interests and thoughts that have nothing to do with me or the company, and I realized how selfish I'd been, consuming all your time, all your energy, never asking if you had somewhere else you'd rather be. I never minded, Lena said quietly. I know. That's what made it worse. He turned to face her, and in the dim light, his eyes were almost black. You give everything to your job, Lena. You're always the first one in and the last one out. You manage my impossible schedule and my impossible moods, and you never complain. But I wonder sometimes if you're sacrificing too much, if I'm asking too much. This conversation felt dangerous, too honest for the roles they were supposed to be playing. You're not asking, Lena said. I'm choosing. There's a difference. Is there? When saying no could cost you your job, your reference, your entire career trajectory? You would never fire me for having boundaries. No, but you don't know that for certain. The power dynamic makes it complicated. He was right. It did make it complicated. It made everything complicated, including this moment, standing in the cold with his jacket around her shoulders and his confession hanging in the air between them. Adrian, she started, but the French doors opened, spilling light and sound onto the terrace. There you are! Richard appeared, drink in hand, smile predatory. We thought you'd snuck off for some privacy. How adorable. Adrian's expression cooled instantly, walls slamming back into place. We were just getting some air. It's warm inside. I'm sure it is. Richard moved closer, his eyes on Lena in a way that made her skin crawl. Lena, you're full of surprises. I have to admit, I didn't expect Adrian to choose someone so normal. No offense. None taken, Lena said, though offense was definitely appropriate. I mean it as a compliment, Richard continued. You're refreshing, real, not like the usual social climbers who throw themselves at the Voss fortune. You actually seem to care about Adrian as a person. Because I do, Lena said simply. Do you? Richard leaned against the balustrade, too close. Or is it a happy coincidence that caring about Adrian comes with a very comfortable lifestyle? Executive assistant salaries are fine, I'm sure, but this... He gestured at the estate, the grounds, the world of wealth surrounding them. This is another level entirely. Adrian moved between them so fast Lena barely saw it happen. One moment Richard was speaking, the next Adrian was in his space, voice low and dangerous. Careful, Richard. I'm just making conversation, Richard said, but he stepped back. No, you're being disrespectful to my girlfriend. There's a difference. Adrian's hand found Lena's, pulling her to his side. Lena's here because I asked her to be. She's wearing my mother's sapphires, because I wanted her to. And if you imply again that she's with me for money, we're going to have a problem that goes beyond family politics. The air crackled with tension. Richard's smile had frozen, become brittle. Touchy, he said. I've never seen you like this, Adrian. She really has gotten under your skin, hasn't she? Yes, Adrian said, the word flat and final. She has. Get used to it. He turned, keeping Lena's hand firmly in his, and walked back toward the house, leaving Richard alone on the terrace. Inside, Lena's pulse was racing. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. Adrian's jaw was tight. Richard's a snake, but he's right about one thing. I've never let anyone get under my skin like this. I don't know what that says about me. Or about us, Lena thought, but didn't say. The rest of the evening blurred. More conversations, more scrutiny, more moments of playing a role that felt increasingly less like acting. Adrian kept her close, his touches becoming more frequent, more natural. A hand on her lower back as they moved through the room, fingers brushing her cheek when he tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The way he looked at her when he thought no one was watching, like she was something precious, something real. At 11, Sebastian announced he was retiring and the party began to disperse. Adrian found his grandfather in the entrance hall, Lena beside him. We should go, Adrian said. It's a long drive back to the city. Stay, Sebastian said. Your old room is ready. Drive back in the morning when you're rested. Grandfather, I insist. Sebastian's eyes moved between them. Besides, I want more time with Lena. Breakfast tomorrow, just the three of us. Then you can escape back to your empire. It wasn't really a request. Adrian glanced at Lena, question in his eyes, and she nodded slightly. What choice did they have? All right, Adrian agreed. Thank you. A housekeeper materialized to show them upstairs, leading them through corridors to a wing of bedrooms. She opened a door, revealing a suite that was somehow both masculine and elegant. Dark furniture, cream walls, a massive four-poster bed that dominated the space. Will you need anything else, Mr. Voss? The housekeeper asked. No, thank you, Margaret. We're fine. The door closed and Lena and Adrian stood in the sudden quiet of the room, alone for the first time since arriving. "There's only one bed," Lena observed. "Yes, I didn't think—" Adrian ran a hand through his hair. "I'll sleep on the sofa or the floor, whatever you're comfortable with." "Don't be ridiculous. The bed's enormous. We can share it like adults." The words came out more confident than she felt. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, something complicated moving behind his eyes. "All right, I'll take the bathroom first, give you privacy to change." He disappeared into the ensuite and Lena exhaled shakily. This was fine, this was professional. They could share a bed without it meaning anything. She found a nightgown laid out on the dresser, silk, elegant, and deep navy that matched her dress. Of course, Adrian had thought of everything. She changed quickly, removing the sapphires carefully and setting them on the nightstand. When Adrian emerged wearing sleep pants and nothing else, Lena forgot how to breathe. She'd never seen him like this. Bare-chested, hair damp from washing his face, looking human and vulnerable and devastatingly attractive. He caught her staring, and something flickered in his expression. "Your turn." Lena fled to the bathroom, took longer than necessary washing her face and brushing her teeth with the supplies that had been provided, trying to calm her racing heart. This was just sleeping, nothing more. When she came out, Adrian was already in bed, on the far side, covers pulled to his waist, reading something on his phone. He looked up when she approached, and the way his eyes tracked her movement made her hyper-aware of the silk against her skin. She slipped under the covers on her side, maintaining careful distance, and Adrian set his phone aside, turning off the lamp. Darkness settled over them, broken only by moonlight through the windows. "Lena," Adrian said quietly. "Yes?" "Thank you. For tonight. For all of this. You were extraordinary." "I was just acting," she whispered. A pause. Then, "Was it?" The question hung in the darkness between them, weighted with everything they weren't saying, everything they couldn't acknowledge. Lena didn't answer. She couldn't, because the truth was becoming impossible to deny. Somewhere between the rehearsed touches and scripted confessions, between the museum photo and his defense of her on the terrace, the line between performance and reality had blurred beyond recognition. And she was terrified of what that meant when morning came, and they had to go back to being boss and assistant, when this night became just a memory, when the feeling she'd unleashed had nowhere left to go except back into the box marked impossible. But for now, in the darkness, with Adrian's breathing evening out beside her, and the weight of his mother's sapphires still somehow present against her throat, Lena let herself imagine, just for a moment, that this could be real. Lena woke to unfamiliar darkness and the disorienting warmth of another body beside her. For a sleep-fogged moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back. The estate. The performance. Adrian sleeping inches away in a bed they were sharing like it was the most natural thing in the world. Except it wasn't natural. It was dangerous and confusing and entirely too intimate for what was supposed to be a simple business arrangement. She turned her head carefully on the pillow, not wanting to wake him, and found Adrian already awake, lying on his side, facing her, his features barely visible in the pre-dawn gloom filtering through the windows. "Sorry," he whispered. "Did I wake you?" "No. What time is it?" "Almost 6. I'm an early riser." "I know." 3 years of managing his schedule meant Lena knew his rhythms better than her own. He was always at the office by 7, often earlier, powered by black coffee and relentless drive. They lay there in the quiet, neither moving, separated by 2 feet of expensive sheets that felt simultaneously like miles and nothing at all. "I couldn't sleep," Adrian admitted, his voice rough from disuse. "Kept thinking about last night." "What about it?" "Everything. The way you handled my family. You were perfect, Lena. Not just convincing, but actually perfect. You charmed Sebastian, held your own against Patricia, put Richard in his place without making a scene. You belonged there." "I was acting," Lena said, the words automatic, defensive. "Were you? Because I wasn't. Not entirely." Adrian shifted slightly closer, and Lena's breath caught. "That photo from the museum? I told myself I kept it because it was a nice picture, because I appreciated good photography. But the truth is, I kept it because it was you. Because even then, months before I asked you here, I was already looking for excuses to keep pieces of you beyond office hours." Lena's heart hammered against her ribs. Adrian, you can't say things like that. Why not? We're alone. No one's performing now. Exactly. Which means this, whatever this is, it's crossing lines we can't uncross. Monday morning, I'm still your assistant. You're still my boss. This night ends and we go back to normal. What if I don't want normal? The question was barely audible, but it detonated in the space between them like a confession too dangerous to survive morning light. Lena closed her eyes, fighting the surge of hope and terror warring in her chest. You're tired. It's been a long night, and your family got under your skin. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months. Adrian's hand moved across the sheets, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin. Do you know what it was like standing next to you last night? Touching you, looking at you, introducing you as mine, even as a lie, and realizing how much I wanted it to be true, how much I've wanted it for longer than I care to admit? Stop. Lena's voice cracked. Please stop. Why? Because it's unprofessional? Because it complicates your career? Or because you feel it too and it terrifies you? She opened her eyes and found him watching her with an intensity that stole her breath. In the dim light, he looked younger, more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him, the armor stripped away, leaving only raw honesty. All of it, she whispered. It's all of those things. Adrian, we can't. There's too much at stake. Then tell me you don't feel anything. Tell me I'm alone in this, that every touch last night was just acting for you, that you can walk away Monday morning and forget this happened. Tell me that, and I'll never mention it again. It would be so easy to lie, to protect herself, her job, the careful distance she'd maintained for 3 years, to say the words that would shut this down before it could destroy everything she'd built. But Lena had never been good at lying to Adrian Voss. I can't tell you that, she said, the admission pulled from somewhere deep and hidden. I can't tell you I don't feel anything, because I do. I have for longer than I should, and I've spent 3 years trying to ignore it, trying to be professional and appropriate, and everything a good assistant should be. But last night, having to pretend we were together, having your hands on me and your words in my ear, it broke something open that I can't close again. Adrian's intake of breath was sharp. Lena, but it doesn't matter. She forced the words out. Feeling something and acting on it are different things. The power dynamic, the professional consequences, the fact that this could destroy my career if it goes wrong, those are real concerns, Adrian. You asked me here to help you, to play a role for one night. That's what I agreed to, nothing more. What if I'm asking for more now? Then you're asking for something I can't give. Not like this. Not when everything is tangled up in performance and pretending and one strange night that doesn't represent real life. Silence fell between them, thick with things unsaid. Adrian's hand finally crossed the remaining distance, his fingers finding hers in the darkness, threading together with gentle pressure. You're right, he said finally. This isn't the time or place, and I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. But Lena, when we get back to the city, when this night is over and we've had time to think clearly, I want to talk about this. Really talk without my family watching or roles to play. Can we do that? It was a terrible idea. It would only make things harder. But Lena found herself nodding anyway. Yes, we can talk. Thank you. Adrian's thumb traced that maddening circle on her palm, the gesture that had become familiar over the past 24 hours. Try to sleep a little more. Breakfast with Sebastian will require all your diplomatic skills. He released her hand and turned onto his back, putting careful distance between them again. Lena closed her eyes, knowing sleep was impossible now, her mind racing with everything that had just been said and everything still unspoken. She must have dozed eventually, because the next thing she knew, pale winter sunlight streamed through the windows and Adrian was already up, dressed in fresh clothes that had somehow appeared, looking every inch the executive again in charcoal slacks and a crisp white shirt. Good morning, he said when he noticed her stirring. I had Margaret bring up some options for you. They're in the closet. Lena sat up, pulling the covers with her, suddenly aware of how intimate this was. Waking up in his family's home, in his childhood bedroom, with him watching her with an expression that made her skin warm. What time is it? 8:30. Breakfast is at 9. I'll wait for you downstairs, give you privacy to get ready. He left before she could respond, and Lena exhaled slowly, trying to center herself. One more performance. Breakfast with Sebastian, then they could leave, then they could go back to their normal lives and figure out what, if anything, came next. The closet revealed several outfits, all in her size, all perfectly selected for a casual but elegant breakfast at a country estate. She chose cashmere pants in cream and a soft sweater in deep green, found her makeup bag from last night, and did her best to look like someone who hadn't spent half the night having dangerous conversations with her boss. When she came downstairs, Adrian was waiting in the entrance hall, and the way his eyes tracked over her made her pulse jump. "Beautiful," he said simply. "It's just breakfast." "I know, but you're still beautiful." There was no performance in his voice, no audience to convince, just truth, plain and devastating. Sebastian's private breakfast room was smaller than the formal dining room, but no less elegant. Windows overlooking the snow-covered gardens, a table set for three with fine china and silver, morning light making everything glow. The patriarch himself sat at the head of the table, reading a newspaper, his coffee steaming beside him. "Ah, there you are," he said, setting the paper aside as they entered. "I was beginning to think you'd escaped in the night. Sit, sit." Margaret's made her famous French toast. They settled into chairs, Lena beside Adrian, and breakfast was served with the same quiet efficiency as dinner had been. For several minutes, they ate in comfortable silence, Sebastian apparently content to let them wake up properly before launching into conversation. "So," he said finally, setting down his fork and fixing Lena with those sharp eyes. "Tell me honestly, what do you think of our circus? And don't sugarcoat it. I'm too old for diplomatic lies." Lena glanced at Adrian, who gave the slightest nod, permission to be honest. "I think you have a complicated family," she said carefully. "People who care about the company's legacy, but have different visions for how to achieve it. There's love there, but also competition. Loyalty mixed with ambition. It makes for interesting dynamics." "Interesting?" Sebastian chuckled. "That's diplomatic for exhausting and occasionally toxic. You're good at this, Lena. Adrian could use someone with your political instincts at a higher level than assistant. Have you thought about what comes next in your career?" The question was pointed, and Lena felt Adrian tense beside her. "I have," she admitted. "Eventually, I'd like to move into strategic operations or business development. I've learned a lot from working with Adrian, and I'd like to apply those skills more directly." "At Voss Industries?" "Possibly, or elsewhere, depending on opportunities." Sebastian sipped his coffee, studying her. "Adrian, you're going to lose her if you keep her boxed in as an assistant. Bright people need room to grow, and Lena's clearly bright." "I'm aware, grandfather," Adrian said tightly. "Are you? Because from where I sit, you found someone exceptional, and you're letting her talents go to waste scheduling your meetings and organizing your files. Promote her. Give her real responsibility, unless you're afraid she'll outshine you." "I'm not afraid of that," Adrian said. "Lena already outshines me in about a dozen ways. But promoting someone you're in a relationship with creates its own complications. Only if you handle it poorly." Sebastian turned back to Lena. "What do you want, my dear? Forget politics and optics for a moment. What would make you happy in your career?" It was the question no one had asked her in 3 years. Not what she could do for the company, not how she could support Adrian's success, but what she personally wanted. "I want to build something," Lena said slowly. "Not just maintain or support, but create. I want to see a project from conception to completion, to make strategic decisions that shape outcomes. I want to prove I can do more than manage someone else's vision. I want to execute my own." "See?" Sebastian gestured at her with his coffee cup. "Vision, ambition, clarity. Adrian, if you let this woman leave for another company, you're a fool." "I don't plan on letting her go anywhere," Adrian said, and the double meaning in his words wasn't lost on anyone. Sebastian smiled, the expression knowing. "No, I don't imagine you do. You've always been possessive of things you value, even as a child. Used to drive your mother crazy." At the mention of Catherine, something flickered across Adrian's face. Grief, old and carefully managed. "I remember," he said quietly. "She used to say I held on too tight, that I needed to learn the difference between keeping something close and crushing it." "Wise woman, your mother." Sebastian's eyes softened. "She would have liked Lena, I think. Would have approved of her for you. The sapphires were hers, Adrian said, glancing at Lena. I wanted you to wear them because... He paused, choosing words carefully. Because they belonged to the last woman I watched my father love completely. He gave them to her on their 10th anniversary, and she wore them to every important family event after that. They represent something real in a family that often deals in appearances. Lena's throat tightened. The weight of those stones around her neck last night had been more than jewelry. It had been legacy, memory, a statement she hadn't fully understood until now. I'll return them before we leave, she said. No. Adrian's hand covered hers on the table. Keep them. I want you to have them. Adrian, I can't accept. Please. His eyes held hers, and in them she saw something raw and honest. They should belong to someone who matters. You matter, Lena. However this, he gestured between them. Whatever we are or become, you matter to me. Let me give you this. Sebastian watched their exchange with the expression of a man who'd just confirmed a long-held suspicion. Well, he said, I think that settles the question of whether this relationship is real. No man gives away his mother's jewelry for a performance. Adrian didn't break eye contact with Lena. No, he doesn't. The moment stretched, waited with implications neither of them could fully voice with Sebastian watching. Finally, Lena nodded slightly. Thank you, she whispered. I'll treasure them. Good. Sebastian cleared his throat, breaking the tension. Now, Adrian, about Richard's proposal for the European expansion. Complete nonsense, obviously, but we should discuss how you want to handle his continued meddling. He won't stop just because you've shown up with a girlfriend. They spent the next hour discussing business, Sebastian probing Adrian's strategies, offering advice born from decades of experience, occasionally drawing Lena into the conversation when her perspective was relevant. She found herself relaxing, enjoying the intellectual sparring, the way Sebastian challenged Adrian's assumptions without undermining his authority. This was what family could be, she thought. Not the performance and politics of last night's gathering, but genuine engagement, respect, the passing of knowledge between generations. You're good for him, Sebastian said to Lena as they were preparing to leave, Adrian having stepped away to take a phone call. I've watched my grandson build walls around himself since his mother died. He's brilliant, capable, more than worthy of leading this company. But he's also isolated himself in ways that aren't healthy. You make him more human, Lena. Don't underestimate the value of that. I'm just his assistant, Mr. Voss. No, you're not, and we both know it. Sebastian's smile was knowing. Whatever you two are figuring out, I approve, for what an old man's opinion is worth. It's worth a great deal, Lena said honestly. Adrian returned and they made their goodbyes, enduring hugs from Sebastian and promises to visit again soon, promises that felt both genuine and impossible given that their relationship wasn't real, would end when they returned to the city, would become just another memory filed away under professional boundaries. The drive back to Manhattan was quiet. Adrian drove this time, having dismissed his driver, and Lena watched the winter landscape blur past the windows as morning gave way to afternoon. They were halfway to the city when Adrian finally broke the silence. I meant what I said about the sapphires. Keep them. Adrian, please don't argue with me about this. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. Last night and this morning, I said things I shouldn't have. I pushed when I promised I wouldn't. But the sapphires, that's not about pressure or expectations. It's just a gift. One I want you to have regardless of what happens between us. What do you think is going to happen between us? Lena asked quietly. I don't know. Adrian's jaw was tight. I know what I want to happen. But what I want and what's smart are rarely the same thing. What do you want? He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, you. In whatever way you'll let me have you. As my girlfriend for real, if you're willing to risk the complications. As my partner in business, if that's all you can give. As my friend, if that's safer. I don't want to lose you, Lena. Not for my life, not in any capacity. Lena's chest felt too tight. I need time to think, to process everything that happened this weekend. Can you give me that? Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. They fell back into silence, but this time it felt less tense, more contemplative. By the time they reached Brooklyn and Adrian pulled up outside her building, Dusk was falling, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. "Thank you," Adrian said as he put the car in park, "for everything you did this weekend, for being extraordinary, for being you." "You're welcome." Lena gathered her things, the small bag Simone had packed, the velvet box containing the sapphires that she still couldn't quite believe were hers to keep. She was reaching for the door handle when Adrian's voice stopped her. "Lena, wait." She turned back, and in the fading light, his expression was stripped of all pretense, all control. "Last night, when I defended you to Richard, that wasn't acting. The anger I felt when he implied you were with me for money, the need to protect you, to claim you as mine, that was real. All of it." He paused. "I need you to know that." "I know," Lena said softly. "I could tell. Could you also tell that I meant everything I said to my grandfather? That you matter to me in ways I'm still trying to understand? That the thought of Monday morning, of going back to pretending there's nothing between us, makes me feel like I'm suffocating? Adrian, I'm sorry. I said I'd give you time, and here I am pushing again." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "It's just hard, knowing what I want and having to wait for you to decide if you want it too." Lena made a decision. A reckless, terrifying, completely inadvisable decision. She leaned across the center console and kissed him. It was soft, brief, barely more than a brush of lips, but the effect was electric. Adrian froze for a heartbeat, then his hand came up to cup her face, deepening the kiss with a hunger that made her gasp. His other hand tangled in her hair, and Lena felt 3 years of suppressed attraction ignite like kindling. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. "What was that?" he asked, voice rough. "A promise," Lena whispered, "that I'm not running, that I feel this too, that we're going to figure it out together, complications and all." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "But I still need time to think about how we do this without destroying everything we've built professionally. Can you accept that?" "I can accept anything that ends with you being mine." Adrian's smile was devastating. "Take your time. Think it through. Just know that I'm here, waiting, completely gone for you in ways that probably violate every HR policy in existence." Lena laughed despite herself. "Probably, definitely." She kissed him once more, quick, sweet, a punctuation mark on a conversation that felt like a beginning rather than an end, then slipped out of the car before she could do something truly reckless, like invite him upstairs. Adrian waited until she was inside her building before driving away, and Lena climbed the stairs to her apartment feeling like she was floating, like the world had tilted on its axis and nothing would ever be quite the same. Inside her small studio, she set down her bag and opened the velvet box, letting the sapphires catch the lamplight. They were beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, a gift that meant everything, a symbol of possibilities both thrilling and dangerous. Her phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. "Made it home. Can't stop thinking about that kiss." "Sleep well, Lena." She typed back, "You too. See you Monday." Another message came through immediately. "Monday can't come fast enough." Lena smiled, closed the box, and tried to imagine what Monday would look like, how they would navigate this new territory between them, how they would balance personal feelings with professional responsibilities, how they would build something real from a foundation of pretense. She had no answers yet, but for the first time in 3 years, she had hope. And that, she thought, as she got ready for bed wearing silk pajamas instead of her usual worn t-shirt, was enough for now. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray December drizzle that made Manhattan look like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. Lena stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes, changing her outfit 3 times before settling on a charcoal dress that was professional but not severe, elegant but not trying too hard. She'd spent most of Sunday trying to think clearly about what came next, about how to navigate the impossible space between what she wanted and what was wise. The kiss had complicated everything. Or maybe it had simplified everything. She still wasn't sure which. Her phone buzzed as she was leaving her apartment. "Adrian. Coffee before the office? There's a place near your building, corner of Smith and Bergen." She shouldn't. They should maintain distance, establish boundaries, figure out the professional implications before adding more intimate moments to the equation. But Lena found herself typing, 20 minutes. The cafe was small and warm, condensation fogging the windows, the smell of espresso and fresh pastries making her stomach growl. Adrian was already there, sitting at a corner table away from the windows, wearing a navy suit that made his eyes look darker. He stood when he saw her, and the smile that crossed his face was unguarded, genuine. Nothing like the controlled expression he wore in the office. "Hi," he said simply. Lena slid into the chair across from him, accepting the latte he'd already ordered, made exactly how she liked it, because of course he knew after 3 years of morning coffee runs. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing between them. "I didn't sleep much last night," Adrian admitted. "Kept replaying Saturday, trying to figure out where the acting stopped and the truth started. I'm not sure I can find the line anymore." "I'm not sure there is one," Lena said quietly. "I think maybe it was all truth, just permission to finally say it out loud." Adrian's hand moved across the small table, palm up, an invitation. Lena hesitated only a second before placing her hand in his, feeling his fingers close around hers with that now familiar warmth. "I want this," he said, voice low enough that it wouldn't carry past their table. "I want you, Lena, not as my assistant, not as a convenient solution to family politics, but as someone I'm choosing because I can't imagine not choosing you. But I need to know, can you want this too? Despite the complications, despite the risks?" "I already do," Lena confessed. "That's what scares me. I've wanted this for so long that now that it's possible, I'm terrified of all the ways it could go wrong." "Name them, the fears. Let's deal with them one by one." Oh, it was such an Adrian approach. Reduce the emotional to the practical, make lists, find solutions. Lena couldn't help but smile. "All right. The power dynamic. You're my boss, Adrian. Dating you changes everything about my professional credibility. People will say I slept my way into any promotion, any opportunity. They'll question every decision you make regarding my career." "Then we change the dynamic," Adrian said without hesitation. "I've already talked to HR, hypothetically, off the record, about what it would take to move you out of a direct reporting relationship to me. There's a position opening up in strategic operations in January. Director level. It reports to Marcus Chen, not to me. The compensation is triple what you're making now, and it's exactly the kind of work you said you wanted, building things, executing your own vision." Lena stared at him. "You already looked into this?" "I spent all of Sunday making calls. If you take that position, we're peers, not boss and subordinate. The power dynamic disappears. What else?" "What if it doesn't work out?" Lena's voice dropped. "What if we try this and it falls apart? Then I've lost my job, my reference, and any chance of a professional relationship with you. I've invested 3 years in building my career at Voss Industries. I can't just throw that away for something that might not last." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I can't promise we'll last forever. No one can. But I can promise that even if we don't work out romantically, I will never let it affect your career. The recommendation letter I'm writing you, it's already done. Signed, sealed, in my desk drawer. It's yours regardless of what happens between us. And that position in strategic operations? It's yours if you want it, whether you date me or not. Your talent earned that opportunity, Lena, not our relationship." You can't separate them that easily," Lena protested. "People will always wonder." "Let them wonder. You'll prove them wrong with your work. You've been proving people wrong your whole life. Small-town girl who made it to New York, worked her way up from nothing, became indispensable to one of the most demanding executives in the city. You don't need my validation to be exceptional. You already are." His words landed like stones in still water, rippling through all her carefully constructed defenses. This was what she'd been afraid of. Not that he couldn't handle the complications, but that he could. That he'd already thought 3 steps ahead while she was still processing step 1. "What about your family?" she asked. "We told them we were together. If we actually date and then break up, Sebastian will know we lied, or we tell him the truth. That the arrangement started as performance but became real. He'll understand. He might even respect the honesty." Adrian's thumb traced circles on her palm. "And if we don't break up, then it was never really a lie, was it? Just a prediction that came true." "You're assuming a lot," Lena said, but her resistance was crumbling. "I'm assuming that what I felt this weekend was real. That the way you kissed me Saturday night meant something. That right now, sitting here with you, I feel more myself than I have in years. Adrian leaned forward. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm seeing things that aren't there. You're not wrong, Lena whispered, but I'm still scared. Good. I'm terrified. Adrian's smile was crooked, vulnerable. I've never felt this way about anyone, Lena. I've had relationships, brief, casual, ultimately meaningless. But you? You've been under my skin for 3 years, and I didn't even realize it until I had to pretend you were mine and discovered I didn't want to stop pretending. So what do we do? Lena asked. How do we make this work without destroying everything? Carefully, honestly. We take it slow, we're transparent about the challenges, and we don't hide from the hard conversations. Adrian squeezed her hand. And we start by you deciding if you want that strategic operations position. Take some time, think about it. If you want it, it's yours by the end of the week. If you don't, we'll find another solution to the reporting structure before we move forward with us. And if I say no to everything, the job, the relationship, all of it, pain flickered across Adrian's face, quickly masked, then I respect that. And we go back to how things were, as much as possible. I won't pressure you, Lena. This has to be your choice. Lena looked at their joined hands, at the way his fingers threaded through hers like they belonged there, at the vulnerability in his expression that she'd never seen before this weekend. She thought about the past 3 years, the early mornings and late nights, the crises navigated and victories celebrated, the 1,000 small moments when she'd caught herself watching him and had to look away. She thought about Saturday night, about wearing his mother's sapphires and standing in his family's estate and feeling for one perfect evening like she belonged beside him. She thought about the kiss in the car and the way he'd looked at her like she was precious, and the fact that he'd already solved half her objections before she'd even voiced them. I want the job, she said finally. Not because of us, or not only because of us. I want it because it's the right next step in my career, and I want you to promise me that if I fail at it, if I'm not good enough, you'll tell me honestly. No protection, no special treatment because we're together. You won't fail, Adrian said. But yes, I promise. Complete honesty, always. Then yes, to the job, and to us, to trying this carefully and slowly and honestly and seeing where it goes. Adrian's smile was incandescent. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent heat flooding through her. Thank you, he said against her skin, for taking the risk, for choosing me. We should probably get to the office, Lena said, reluctantly pulling her hand back, before people start wondering where we are. Let them wonder. But Adrian stood, gathering their coffee cups. Though you're right, we should maintain some professional distance at work, at least until your position transfer is official. I don't want to give HR any ammunition to block the move. They walked to the office together through the drizzle, not touching but close enough that their shoulders brushed occasionally, talking about the day's schedule and the week's priorities like nothing had changed. But everything had changed, and Lena felt it in every shared glance, every careful distance maintained, every word that carried double meaning. The executive floor was already buzzing with Monday morning energy when they arrived. People rushing between offices, phones ringing, the caffeine-fueled momentum of a new week. Lena went to her desk outside Adrian's office, booting up her computer and pulling up his calendar like she had 1,000 times before. Adrian paused in his office doorway. Lena, can you schedule a meeting with Marcus Chen for me this week? I have a position I want to discuss with him. His voice was perfectly professional, but his eyes held hers with warmth that made her pulse race. Of course, Mr. Voss. I'll send him some options this morning. Thank you. He disappeared into his office, and Lena exhaled slowly, trying to focus on work and not on the fact that her entire life had just shifted on its axis. The morning passed in a blur of emails and phone calls, meetings and crises that demanded immediate attention. Lena fielded questions from board members, rescheduled a conflicting appointment, ordered lunch for a client presentation, all while trying not to stare through the glass wall separating her desk from Adrian's office. Around 11, her phone buzzed with a text. Adrian. This is harder than I thought it would be, pretending nothing's changed. She typed back, only a few more days, then it gets easier. Does it? Or does it get more complicated when we have to explain to everyone why you're suddenly in a different department? We'll figure it out. We're good at solving problems. We're good at a lot of things. The suggestiveness in his text made her cheeks warm. She glanced up to find him watching her through the glass, a slight smile playing at his lips. Her phone buzzed again. "Stop looking at me like that. I'm trying to maintain professional distance. You texted me first. Fair point. Back to work." Lena smiled and turned her attention back to her screen, but her focus was shot. She kept catching herself replaying moments from the weekend. The weight of his hand on her waist, the sound of his voice when he'd called her beautiful, the kiss in the car that had tasted like possibility and promise. At lunch, Adrian had a meeting with the finance team, and Lena used the time to research the strategic operations department. She pulled up org charts, read through recent project summaries, identified the key players she'd be working with. Director of Strategic Operations. It was a title that 3 years ago would have seemed impossible, but now it was within reach. Because of her work, she reminded herself, because she'd earned it. But a small voice whispered that earning it and being given it weren't quite the same thing, and she'd spend the next year proving to everyone, including herself, that she deserved it. That afternoon, Patricia called from the European division. Lena answered Adrian's line when he didn't pick up on the second ring. "Lena, how delightful to hear your voice. Is my nephew available?" "He's in a meeting, but I can have him call you back." "No need, I'm actually calling for you, dear. I wanted to tell you how lovely it was to meet you Saturday. You made quite an impression on the family." "Thank you. Everyone was very welcoming." "Well, between you and me, we were all a bit shocked that Adrian brought someone home. But watching you two together, there's something genuine there. I hope you know what you're getting into, though. Dating a Voss comes with certain expectations." Lena's grip tightened on the phone. "I'm learning to navigate them." "I'm sure you are. You're clearly intelligent. Just remember that business and pleasure rarely mix cleanly in our family. Adrian's married to that company in ways that won't change, no matter how much he cares about you. Can you live with always being second to Voss Industries?" The question was pointed, designed to probe for weakness. Lena took a breath. "I don't see it as competition," she said carefully. "Adrian's dedication to the company is part of who he is. I wouldn't want him to be less committed to his work. I just want to be part of his life in whatever way makes sense for both of us." A diplomatic answer. Patricia sounded almost impressed. "You'll do well in this family, Lena. Just don't let him take you for granted. Voss men have a tendency to assume their women will always be there, waiting patiently. My advice? Make him work for it." "I will." "Thank you, Patricia." "Take care, dear, and tell Adrian to call his aunt occasionally. I shouldn't have to go through his assistant to reach him." The call ended and Lena sat back, processing. So the family was watching, evaluating, drawing conclusions. She'd need to be careful. One wrong move and the sharks would circle. Adrian emerged from his meeting an hour later, loosening his tie as he crossed to her desk. "How was your afternoon?" he asked, voice casual but eyes intent. "Productive. Your aunt called. She wants you to call her." "I'm sure she does." "What did she really want?" "To warn me that dating a Voss is complicated, and I should make you work for it." Adrian's laugh was genuine. "She's not wrong on either count. Are you sufficiently warned?" "Terrified, but still here." "Good." He glanced around. The floor was mostly empty as people attended meetings or took late lunches. "Dinner tonight? Somewhere quiet where we can talk properly?" "I thought we were maintaining distance." "At the office. It's almost 5. Office hours are ending." Adrian leaned against her desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Besides, if we're really doing this, we should have a proper first date. One that doesn't involve my family or fake relationships." "Is that what Saturday was? Our fake first date?" "That was reconnaissance, preparation, very professional." His smile was devastating. "Tonight can be the real thing." Lena knew she should say no. They'd agreed to go slowly, to be careful, but she found herself nodding anyway. "Where?" "Carmine's, in the West Village. I told my family we had our first date there, so we might as well make it true. That's either very romantic or very twisted." "Can't it be both?" Adrian straightened, suddenly all business as someone rounded the corner. "I'll pick you up at 7. Wear something comfortable. Nothing fancy." He disappeared back into his office, and Lena tried to focus on finishing the day's work. But her mind was already racing ahead to tonight, to dinner, to whatever came next in this strange new reality they were building. At 6, she left the office, went home to change, and found herself standing in front of her closet again, overthinking every choice. She finally settled on dark jeans, a soft cashmere sweater in deep burgundy, and boots that were practical for December but still elegant. Minimal makeup, hair down in the waves the stylist had created that were slowly becoming her new normal. When Adrian knocked at 7 exactly, Lena opened the door to find him in jeans and a dark sweater, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him at work. No suit, no armor, just Adrian, holding a single white rose and smiling like a man who'd won something valuable. "Hi," he said. "Hi." She took the rose, feeling ridiculously like a teenager on prom night. "Come in. I just need to grab my coat." He stepped into her small studio, and she saw him take it in, the modest furniture, the books stacked on every surface, the framed photo of her and her sister on the shelf. It was nothing like the world he came from, and for a moment Lena felt self-conscious about the gap between their lives. "I like it," Adrian said, as if reading her thoughts. "It's very you, organized but lived in, thoughtful. It's small. It's yours. That matters." He picked up a book from her coffee table, a worn paperback of poetry. "Elizabeth Bishop, I didn't know you read poetry." "There's a lot you don't know about me," Lena said, pulling on her coat. "I'm looking forward to learning." He set the book down carefully, exactly where he'd found it. "Ready?" Carmine's was everything Adrian had promised. Small, intimate, tucked into a side street where tourists rarely wandered. The owner greeted Adrian by name, led them to a corner table with a candle already lit, and left them with menus and knowing smiles. "You really do come here," Lena observed. "Once a month, usually. It's the one place in the city where no one bothers me about business." Adrian opened the menu but didn't look at it. "Although now it'll be the place I took you on our first date, so it's going to mean something different." "Our second first date," Lena corrected. "If we're counting Saturday." "True. How many first dates do we get before we have to move on to second dates?" "I think we've already had about a dozen dates disguised as working late nights." Adrian's smile was soft. "Fair point. Those nights when it was just us and the city lights and coffee at midnight, those felt like dates, didn't they? I just didn't let myself acknowledge it." The waiter appeared and they ordered seafood risotto for her, ossobuco for him, a bottle of Barolo to share, exactly as they'd told his family. Making the lie true, or maybe discovering that it had always been true, just waiting to be lived. When they were alone again, Adrian reached across the table for her hand. "Tell me something I don't know about you," he said. "Something real, something you've never shared at work." Lena thought for a moment. "I write poetry sometimes. Bad poetry, probably. But it helps me process things. I have journals full of terrible verses about New York and ambition and feelings I can't quite name. Can I read them someday?" "Maybe. If you're very patient and I've had a lot of wine." "Deal." His thumb traced patterns on her palm. "I play piano. Did you know that?" "No. Where did you learn?" "My mother taught me. She was classically trained, could have been a concert pianist if she'd wanted, but she married my father instead, had me, and the piano became something she did for herself in the evenings when the business talk got too loud." Adrian's expression was distant, remembering. "After she died, I kept playing. It was the only time I felt close to her. There's a practice room in my building that I use sometimes at 2 in the morning when I can't sleep." "That's beautiful and sad," Lena said softly. "Most beautiful things are a little sad, I think. They remind us what we've lost even as they show us what we still have." The wine arrived, and they toasted to first dates and second chances, to truth disguised as lies, and lies that became truth. They talked through dinner about everything and nothing, childhood memories and favorite books, places they wanted to travel, and dreams they'd given up on. Lena learned that Adrian had wanted to be an architect before family obligation pulled him into business, that he spoke 4 languages fluently, that he had a scar on his shoulder from falling out of a tree at the estate when he was 9. Adrian learned that Lena had almost joined the Peace Corps before deciding New York was its own kind of foreign country, that she was terrified of heights, but loved rooftop bars, that she'd never been in love before because she'd never let herself be vulnerable enough. "And now?" Adrian asked, the question heavy with implications. "Now I'm trying to learn," Lena said. "Vulnerability. Letting someone see the messy parts, not just the polished surface." I want to see all of it, Adrian said. The mess, the polish, everything in between. They lingered over dessert, neither wanting the night to end, until finally the restaurant began closing around them and they had no choice but to leave. Adrian insisted on walking her home despite the cold, and they strolled through the village hand in hand, watching the city glitter around them. At her building, they stood in the small entryway, reluctant to separate. I should let you go inside, Adrian said, but he didn't release her hand. It's cold. It is, Lena agreed, not moving. Lena. He stopped, started again. Can I kiss you? A real first date kiss? Not one in a car driven by panic and confession? She answered by pulling him down to her, pressing her lips to his with intention this time, savoring it. He tasted like wine and chocolate, and his hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and desperate, 3 years of denial burning away in the space between one breath and the next. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I'm falling for you, he whispered. I think I've been falling since the Carlson crisis, maybe before. I just didn't have permission to admit it until now. I'm already there, Lena confessed. I've been there for longer than I should be. This terrifies me, Adrian, how much I feel, how fast it's happening. We'll go slow, he promised. We'll be careful, but Lena, I'm in this, completely. Whatever it takes to make this work, I'm committed. Even if it means changing how we work together, even if it's complicated and messy, especially then. He kissed her again, soft and sweet. Go inside before I do something inadvisable, like ask to come up. Would that be so inadvisable? Tonight it would. I want to do this right. Court you properly, like you deserve. Not rush things, because we've been dancing around this for 3 years. Lena smiled against his lips. Adrian Voss, romantic. Who knew? You're discovering all my secrets, he said. Better get used to it. She kissed him once more, then reluctantly pulled away and headed inside, looking back to find him still standing there, watching her with an expression that made her heart stutter. Inside her apartment, Lena leaned against the door, a smile she couldn't suppress spreading across her face. Her phone buzzed. Adrian. Made it home. Already missing you. Is that too much too soon? She typed back. Only if you expect me not to feel the same way. Good. Sleep well, Lena. Dream of me. Arrogant. Accurate, though? She laughed, typing, Good night, Adrian. Good night, beautiful. Lena got ready for bed with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. And when she finally slept, she dreamed of piano music and poetry, of kisses that tasted like wine and promises that felt like truth. Tomorrow would bring new complications. Marcus Chen to meet with, a position to transition into, an entire office of people who would notice the shift between her and Adrian. But tonight, she let herself just be happy. It was enough. The meeting with Marcus Chen happened on Wednesday afternoon in a glass-walled conference room on the 15th floor. Lena sat beside Adrian, trying to project confidence while her heart hammered against her ribs. Marcus was in his late 40s, sharp-eyed and known for running strategic operations with exacting standards and zero tolerance for mediocrity. So, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair and studying Lena with undisguised curiosity. Adrian tells me you are interested in the director position. That's a significant jump from executive assistant. It is, Lena agreed, refusing to be intimidated. But I've spent 3 years learning this company from the inside out. I know how every department operates, where the inefficiencies are, which projects succeed and which fail. I've managed crisis situations, negotiated with difficult stakeholders, and identified strategic opportunities that saved millions. The only difference between what I've been doing and what your department does is the title. Marcus's eyebrow arched. Confident? I like that. Give me an example, something specific where you identified a strategic opportunity. Lena didn't hesitate. The Carlson acquisition last year. Everyone was focused on the purchase price and market share gains, but I noticed a clause in their vendor contracts that would have cost us $15 million annually in duplicated services. I restructured the integration plan to consolidate those contracts, and we saved the full amount. That's strategic operations, seen beyond the obvious to find value others miss. I remember that, Marcus said, glancing at Adrian. We wondered where that insight came from. It came from Lena, Adrian said quietly. It always has. I've been taking credit for her brilliance for 3 years. Time to let her shine on her own. Marcus studied them both for a long moment, and Lena could practically see him calculating, assessing, reading between the lines. Let me be direct, he said. There's going to be talk. Executive assistant to director in one jump, recommended by her boss who she's rumored to be dating. People will assume the worst. Can you handle that scrutiny, Lena? Because it will be intense. I can handle it, Lena said firmly. Let them talk. I'll prove them wrong with results. I've spent my whole life being underestimated. It just motivates me to work harder. And you? Marcus turned to Adrian. You're comfortable with this. Moving her out of your direct orbit, letting her succeed or fail on her own merit. More than comfortable, Adrian said. Necessary. Lena's outgrown being anyone's assistant. She needs room to build something herself, and I need to stop being the ceiling on her potential. Marcus was quiet for another moment, then nodded decisively. All right, I'll recommend you for the position, Lena, but understand, I don't give special treatment. You'll be held to the same standards as everyone else, maybe higher given the circumstances. Can you accept that? I wouldn't want it any other way, Lena said. Good. HR will process the transfer. You'll start January 2nd. That gives you 3 weeks to wrap up your current responsibilities and prepare. Marcus stood, extending his hand. Welcome to Strategic Operations. Don't make me regret this. Lena shook his hand, feeling the weight of the moment. I won't. Thank you. When they left the conference room, Adrian's hand found hers briefly in the empty hallway. A quick squeeze of congratulation and support before they separated to maintain professional distance. But his smile said everything words couldn't. Pride, joy, and something deeper that made Lena's chest tight with emotion. That evening, Adrian took her to the practice room in his building, the one he'd mentioned at dinner. It was small and soundproofed, containing nothing but a beautiful grand piano that gleamed under soft lights. Lena had never heard him play, had only imagined it based on his brief confession about his mother. Sit, he said, gesturing to the bench, and she settled beside him as his fingers found the keys. The music that emerged was achingly beautiful. Chopin, she thought, though she couldn't name the specific piece. Adrian played with his eyes closed, lost in the melody, and Lena watched his face transform into something unguarded and vulnerable. This was the part of himself he kept hidden, the softness beneath the executive armor, and he was sharing it with her like a gift. When the final notes faded into silence, he opened his eyes and found her watching him with tears on her cheeks. That was beautiful, she whispered. My mother's favorite piece, Nocturne in E-flat major. His hand covered hers on the bench between them. I haven't played it for anyone since she died, but I wanted you to hear it. Why me? Because you see me, Lena, not just the CEO or the Voss heir or the man who signs your paychecks. You see all the parts I usually hide, and you don't run from them. That's rare. That's precious. She kissed him then, there on the piano bench with Chopin still echoing in the air, and it felt like crossing another threshold, moving deeper into territory that was becoming less about fake relationships and more about real commitment. Play something else, she murmured against his lips. What do you want to hear? Something happy, something that sounds like beginnings. He smiled and launched into something bright and playful. Mozart, maybe, dancing and intricate. Lena leaned against his shoulder, listening, and thought that happiness might sound exactly like this, unexpected, complex, and perfectly right. The days until her position transfer blurred together in a strange mix of endings and beginnings. Lena trained her replacement, a competent woman named Sarah, who would manage Adrian's chaos with the same dedication Lena had. She documented processes, transferred knowledge, closed out projects that had been hers to manage. And through it all, she and Adrian navigated their new reality with careful intention. They kept their distance at work, maintaining professionalism even as everyone seemed to sense something had shifted. But after hours, they were inseparable. Dinners at quiet restaurants, walks through winter parks, evenings at his apartment where she learned he could actually cook, and he learned she was terrible at it. They talked about everything: his childhood loneliness in a family that valued achievement over affection, her struggle to find belonging after her parents died, the dreams they'd deferred for practical ambitions. They fought occasionally. Sharp disagreements about politics or business strategy that flared hot and resolved quickly because neither could stand the distance that anger created. And they discovered each other slowly, deliberately, with the kind of attention that built foundations instead of just heat. On Friday of her last week as his assistant, Richard called the office. Lena answered out of habit, even though she was technically training Sarah now. Adrian Voss's office. Lena, how unexpected. Richard's voice dripped with false friendliness. I heard congratulations are in order. Director of Strategic Operations. Quite a promotion. Thank you, Richard. I'm sure it has nothing to do with your personal relationship with my cousin. These things happen organically, don't they? Merit-based, I'm certain. Lena's jaw tightened. If you have something to say it directly. Just that it's fascinating how quickly things have progressed. A fake girlfriend arrangement that becomes a real relationship, followed immediately by a major promotion. From the outside, it looks rather convenient, don't you think? From the outside, a lot of things look different than they are, Lena said coldly. But people with actual substance don't waste time worrying about appearances. Is there something business-related you needed, or are you just calling to demonstrate your insecurity? Richard's laugh was sharp. You have teeth, good. You'll need them in this family. Just remember, Lena, what Adrian gives, he can take away. Don't get too comfortable. The line went dead. Lena sat at her desk, hands shaking with anger, until Adrian emerged from his office and saw her expression. What happened? She told him, watching his face darken with each word. He had no right to speak to you that way, Adrian said, voice tight with controlled fury. I'll handle Richard. No. Lena stood, meeting his eyes. Let me handle it. I need to prove I can fight my own battles, especially now. If you defend me every time someone questions my credentials, it just proves their point. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. All right, but if he crosses the line again, he answers to me, family or not. Deal. She softened, touching his arm briefly. I'm okay, Adrian. Insecure men throwing tantrums don't scare me. I've dealt with worse. I know you have. It's one of the 1,000 things I love about you. The words fell between them like stones in still water. Adrian froze, clearly not having meant to say them out loud, and Lena's breath caught. You love me? She whispered. Yes. He said it simply, without taking it back or softening it. I love you. I probably have for longer than I realized. If that's too much too soon, I understand, but I'm not going to lie about it. Lena felt tears prick her eyes. It's terrifying. I know. And completely overwhelming. I know that too. And I love you back, which makes it even more terrifying. Adrian's smile was brilliant, transformative. He pulled her into his office, closed the door, and kissed her with a thoroughness that made her forget they were at work, that Sarah was probably watching through the glass, that professionalism was even a concept that mattered. Say it again, he demanded against her lips. I love you, Lena whispered. I love you, and it scares me, and I'm doing it anyway. That's all I need. You, scared and brave, and doing it anyway. They stood there holding each other until someone knocked on the door and reality intruded, but something had shifted again. Another line crossed, another truth spoken, another piece of foundation laid. Her last day as Adrian's assistant arrived with the weight of endings and the lightness of new beginnings. The office threw a small celebration, colleagues congratulating her on the promotion, while exchanging knowing looks that Lena ignored with practiced grace. She gave a brief speech thanking everyone for their support, carefully not looking at Adrian because if she did, she'd lose composure. When the party ended and the office emptied, Lena sat at her desk one final time, looking at the space she'd occupied for 3 years. Her replacement's belongings already filled the drawers, her nameplate already replaced. It was bittersweet, this letting go of what had defined her for so long. Adrian emerged from his office carrying a wrapped box. I have something for you, he said. A going-away gift. Or maybe a welcome gift for your new position. I'm not sure which. Lena unwrapped it carefully, revealing a leather portfolio embossed with her initials. Inside was the recommendation letter he'd promised, along with something else. A handwritten note. She read it while he watched. Lena, 3 years ago, you walked into my office for an interview and I knew immediately you'd be exceptional. I didn't know you'd also be essential. Thank you for every early morning, every late night, every crisis navigated and victory celebrated. Thank you for seeing past my walls and being patient while I learned to let you in. Thank you for taking a risk on us when every logical argument said you shouldn't. You're going to be extraordinary in strategic operations, but you've always been extraordinary. I just finally get to tell you. All my love, Adrian. Lena looked up to find him watching her with an expression that was equal parts hope and vulnerability. You wrote this today? She asked. I've been writing it for weeks. Different versions, trying to find the right words. Not sure I ever did, but those are the truest ones I have. She kissed him there at her old desk, in the empty office with the city lights blazing beyond the windows, and it felt like a perfect ending and a perfect beginning all at once. Over Christmas, Adrian took her back to the estate. This time not as a fake girlfriend, but as the real thing. The family's reaction was mixed. Sebastian delighted and knowing, Patricia skeptical but warming, Richard icily polite in a way that suggested he was plotting something. But Caroline pulled Lena aside during dessert with a smile. I knew it was real, she said. Saturday night, the way Adrian looked at you when he thought no one was watching, that wasn't acting. I'm happy for you both. And don't let Richard get to you. He's just angry that Adrian found someone who actually challenges him. Thank you, Lena said, meaning it. Fair warning, though, dating into this family means navigating a lot of complicated politics. Are you ready for that? I've been navigating complicated politics since I was Adrian's assistant. This is just a different kind. Caroline laughed. True. Well, welcome to the family officially. We need more people who don't take any of this too seriously. Later, when they were alone in Adrian's childhood bedroom again, he pulled her close and kissed her temple. Thank you for coming back here with me. I know it's not easy. Your family's growing on me, Lena said. Some of them, anyway. They love you, even the ones who won't admit it. And you? Do you love me? More every day. Adrian's arms tightened around her. Lena Carter, you've completely destroyed my carefully controlled life, and I've never been happier. Good. You needed some chaos. I needed you. Chaos just came with the package. They made love that night in the same bed where they'd first shared confessions, and it felt sacred somehow, transforming a space that had been about performance into something real and intimate and theirs. January brought her first day in strategic operations, and Lena walked into her new office feeling equal parts terror and exhilaration. The space was small but hers, with windows overlooking the city and a desk that held no one's agenda but her own. Marcus threw her into the deep end immediately. A failing project that needed rescue, a new market analysis that required fresh perspective, a team that watched her with skepticism barely concealed. She worked harder than she'd ever worked, arriving before dawn and leaving after dark, determined to prove she'd earned this position on merit. The learning curve was steep and unforgiving, but Adrian had been right. She was ready for this, more than ready. Her first major win came 6 weeks in, identifying an acquisition opportunity that everyone else had dismissed as too risky. Lena built a comprehensive analysis, presented it to the executive team with confidence that surprised even herself, and watched as her recommendations were approved unanimously. Marcus actually smiled. Well done, he said after the meeting. That's the kind of strategic thinking we need more of. Adrian caught her in the hallway afterward, pulled her into an empty conference room and kissed her breathless. I'm so proud of you, he said against her lips. Watching you present in there, you were magnificent. I was terrified. You hit it well. That's leadership, Lena. Doing the hard thing while terrified. Learn from the best, she said, smiling. They'd been navigating their relationship carefully at work, maintaining professional distance in public while stealing private moments when they could. It was complicated and sometimes frustrating, but it worked. People had mostly stopped whispering about favoritism when Lena's results started speaking for themselves. By spring, they'd found their rhythm. Work was work, challenging and demanding, but separate from their personal life in ways that protected both. Evenings were theirs, dinners at Carmine's, piano music at midnight, lazy Sundays reading poetry and debating philosophy. They fought sometimes, both strong-willed and opinionated, but they'd learned to fight fair, to choose connection over being right. On a Saturday in April, Adrian took Lena to the Museum of Modern Art, stopping in front of the Rothko painting where he'd first photographed her. I have something to ask you, he said, and when Lena turned, he was on one knee with a small velvet box in his hands. Her heart stopped. "I know it's only been 6 months since we made this real," Adrian said, voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. "But I've loved you longer than that. I've loved you through 3 years of pretending I didn't, through one perfect weekend of pretending we were something we weren't, through every moment since when we stopped pretending altogether." Lena Carter, you're the most extraordinary person I've ever known. You challenge me, inspire me, make me want to be better than I am. I want to spend the rest of my life learning your poetry, hearing your thoughts, building something real with you. Will you marry me? The museum faded away. The other visitors disappeared. There was only Adrian on his knee, offering her everything. "Yes," Lena whispered, then louder. "Yes, absolutely yes." The ring was perfect. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, echoing his mother's necklace that Lena still wore for important occasions. He slipped it on her finger with hands that shook slightly, then stood and kissed her while a small crowd of museum-goers applauded. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Good," Lena said, laughing and crying simultaneously. "We'll be terrified together." They told Sebastian first, driving to the estate that afternoon. The patriarch took one look at Lena's ring and smiled with genuine warmth. "About time," he said. "I was beginning to think you'd never get around to it, Adrian." "I wanted to be sure she'd say yes," Adrian replied. "Of course she said yes. Anyone with eyes could see you're perfect for each other." Sebastian raised his glass. "To Adrian and Lena, may you build something even stronger than what your grandparents had." The engagement party happened at the estate in May, a smaller affair than the Christmas gathering, but no less significant. This time, Lena walked in not as someone playing a role, but as Adrian's fiancée, wearing his mother's sapphires and his ring, belonging there not by performance, but by choice. Richard approached her on the terrace, where she'd stepped out for air. "Congratulations," he said, the word stiff. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," Lena replied evenly, refusing to take the bait. "I misjudged you," Richard admitted after a moment. "I thought you were using Adrian, but watching you these past months, seeing what you've accomplished in strategic operations, you actually love him, and you're actually talented. I was wrong to suggest otherwise." It was as close to an apology as someone like Richard could manage. Lena nodded. "I appreciate you saying that." "Don't let this family consume you," Richard said quietly. "Hold on to who you are. That's what Adrian needs, someone who won't bend to family pressure, who'll keep him human." "I don't plan on bending," Lena assured him. "Good. We need more of that around here." He walked away, and Lena smiled. Progress, even small progress, was still progress. Adrian found her moments later, wrapping his arms around her from behind and resting his chin on her shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "How strange life is. A year ago, I was your assistant trying desperately not to fall in love with you. Now I'm your fiancé, planning a wedding, building a career that's mine. It feels surreal." "Good surreal or bad surreal?" "The best kind." She turned in his arms, looking up at him. "I never imagined I could have this. Professional success and personal happiness, both at once. I always thought I'd have to choose." "You don't have to choose anything except us," Adrian said. "Everything else we figure out together." The wedding happened in September at the estate, a golden afternoon that felt like something from a dream. Lena wore a simple silk dress that made her feel like herself, carried white roses, and walked down an aisle lined with everyone who mattered. Her sister stood as her maid of honor, crying happy tears. Marcus attended, along with her team from Strategic Operations. Sebastian sat in the front row, beaming with grandfatherly pride. And Adrian waited at the altar, looking at her like she was something miraculous, like he couldn't quite believe his luck. They wrote their own vows. Adrian went first, his voice steady and sure. "Lena, you walked into my life as my assistant and became my everything. You saw past my walls, waited while I learned to let you in, and loved me despite all my flaws and complications. You challenged me to be better, to think deeper, to live more fully. I promise to support your dreams as fiercely as you've supported mine, to fight fair when we disagree, to play you piano at midnight when you can't sleep, and to choose us every single day for the rest of my life." I love you more than I knew I could love anything, and I'm the luckiest man alive that you chose me back." Lena's turn came, and she had to pause to steady her voice. "Adrian, for 3 years I told myself that loving you was impossible. Too risky, too complicated, too far outside the safe boundaries I'd built. Then you asked me to pretend to be yours for one night, and I discovered that pretending was harder than just telling the truth. You've taught me that the best things in life are worth being terrified for, that vulnerability is strength, that love doesn't make us weaker, it makes us capable of things we never imagined. I promise to be your partner in every sense, to celebrate your victories and support you through defeats, to argue with you when you're wrong and admit it when I am, to build something beautiful with you that's ours alone. I love you, Adrian Voss, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." When the officiant pronounced them married and they kissed, Lena felt something settle in her chest, a rightness, a completeness, a sense of finally being exactly where she belonged. The reception lasted until stars filled the sky, music and laughter echoing across the estate grounds. They danced their first dance to piano music Adrian had recorded himself, and when Lena rested her head on his shoulder, she thought that happiness tasted exactly like this, hard-won and precious, built from honesty instead of performance, real in ways that mattered. Late in the evening, they snuck away from the party, walking hand in hand through the darkened gardens until they found themselves on the same terrace where Richard had confronted them a year ago. "Remember this night?" Adrian asked. "When I defended you, when I realized I was in too deep?" "I remember thinking you were going to ruin everything," Lena said, "that letting this be real would destroy us both. And instead, it saved us." She turned to face him, this man who was now her husband, her partner, her home. "You saved me, Adrian, from a life of safe choices and careful distance. You taught me that love is worth the risk." "We saved each other," Adrian corrected, pulling her close. "I was drowning in responsibility and isolation before you. You made me remember what it feels like to be human, to want something beyond the next business victory." They kissed under the stars, in the gardens of the estate where their story had truly begun, and Lena thought about how strange and wonderful life could be, how a fake arrangement could become the realest thing she'd ever known, how one night of pretending could unlock years of truth. A year later, when Lena was promoted to Vice President of Strategic Operations, and Adrian announced her promotion to the board with unconcealed pride. When she stood before the executives who'd once questioned her credentials and presented strategies that would shape the company's future, she remembered that night she'd first walked into the Voss estate wearing borrowed confidence and his mother's sapphires. She'd been so afraid then, of exposure, of failure, of wanting something she thought she could never have. But fear had taught her courage, and courage had led her here, to a career she'd built on her own merit, to a marriage founded on honesty and choice, to a life that was messy and complicated and absolutely perfect. And when she came home that evening to find Adrian at the piano, playing something soft and beautiful just for her, Lena thought that maybe the best love stories weren't the ones that started with certainty. Maybe they were the ones that started with fear and became brave, that began with pretending and chose truth, that took the impossible and made it beautifully, perfectly real. "Play something happy," she said, the same request she'd made years ago. Adrian smiled, made room for her on the bench, and began to play. Something bright and intricate, full of promise and joy. She leaned against his shoulder, exactly as she had that first time, and thought that beginnings sounded like this, unexpected, complex, and exactly right. They'd started with a lie that became truth, with a weekend arrangement that became forever. And in the end, the fake relationship had given them something more authentic than either had dared to hope for. A love that was chosen every day, built on honesty and trust, as real as anything could be. It was enough. It was everything. It was theirs.